What's happening, Heather?
Hello.
Where's your pop? Still on the way home from the airport?
He actually went golfing today. So he's heading back from the golf course.
Oh, I thought he was gonna be out of town all weekend or something, coming back today.
But one of the wives tested positive for COVID, so they never went. They just went golfing instead in town. So
yep. How you doing?
Busy.
Hey,
I added another college degree.
What's that?
That I'm doing another college degree on top of my surveying degree.
Oh, what are you gonna get?
Business management.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah. So staying busy.
Right on. What happened to you on last Thursday night? Where were you?
Last Thursday. What was last Thursday?
That was the scholarship awards thing.
Oh, my grandma's out of town, so I've been going to her house. So I was busy feeding chickens.
Feeding chickens?
She has 14 chickens.
Wow, cool. Did you get any eggs?
I got 2 dozen.
Wow.
Yep. So staying busy. Landon is presenting tonight and he is yet to sign on. So.
And what's he signing on to talk to us about tonight?
Creating better land surveying RFPs.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Lucas is on next week.
Cool.
I got one of our young surveyors from Wisconsin to come on Mentoring Mondays for a partnership. She actually just won the secretary position over the weekend for YSN. So I was kind of waiting for Landon to sign on, but there's already 5 people in the waiting room.
Oh, good. I just sent Landon the text.
Oh, here comes Landon.
You're muted, Landon.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was having trouble with my mic, but it's working now, huh? That's weird.
When you sign in, you're already muted automatically.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm glad you can hear me. How's it going, Rob?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing all right. That doesn't look like Trent. Is that Trent's daughter?
It is.
Heather.
Hi, Heather. It's nice to meet you.
You too. Mama, do you want me to close that door? Okay.
Did we have anybody sign up for another dose of boring Landon and for second dose for the same month or what?
There's currently 7 waiting
in the waiting room to hear you.
Oh, okay. All right.
Whenever you're ready, I can let them in.
Oh yeah, whenever. I'm super informal. So Heather, are you going to be a surveyor when you grow up or what?
Yes.
Awesome. Do you work for your dad already?
Yes.
He's already a surveyor, Landon.
I like it. What do you do for your dad?
All the behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. She's the power behind the throne.
Yes.
Yeah, she's the magician behind the curtain.
Yeah, awesome.
The important thing is she gets mentoring Mondays up and running when her dad's away from the house.
Yeah, that's the most vital part of her job for sure. How's retirement going, Rob?
It sucks. I got to go start working somewhere.
Yeah. Did you get were you helping your mom move, or you were doing something with your mom, right?
Yeah, I was gonna be spending time with her until she passed. So.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. 2 weeks into my retirement, she checked out.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Was that a COVID thing or something different?
No, she was just worn out.
Yeah.
I think she was 96.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my grandparents are getting up about that age.
All right. Nolan's here, Ben's here, George, Jerry, Jason, Rebecca, Caitlin.
Is that your sailing picture, Joey?
Yeah, this is actually taken at the sailing school we have here in the city of Ventura at the Ventura Harbor.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's a neat looking picture.
Joey,
Yeah, but I am an avid sailor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Better story than that, Joey. That's me in the America's Cup races.
That's
you look
right.
close, you can see Dennis Conner there next to
Yeah, he'd have fooled me for sure.
I'm sailing right now, actually. So
what? Yeah, that's cool. We had a couple guys go down your neck of the woods a few weeks ago, and they were called us up. They're like, "It's 78 degrees." We're like, "Shut up."
yeah, Ventura's a hard place to leave, man. We're spoiled here.
Yeah.
Right now it's like a really chilly, like very, very cold 58,
Yeah. Yeah. Where we're at, it's been pretty good this winter, but every once in a while we'll get a winter where we get the they call it the Delta fog, the Thule fog we get, and like we'll go a couple weeks without seeing any sun. It gets a little rough.
Yeah, we get that too. They call that the marine layer, and it's like June, like May, June, July. Sometimes it'll be all that time.
Yeah.
May gray and June gloom.
Yeah, sometimes no sky July.
No sky July. Yeah. My wife and I sometimes do our anniversary in Mendocino, and they say like the months that you would think you'd want to go to Mendocino that's when they get all the fog. So our anniversary is in the fall. They say it's actually kind of nice there. They say if you go in June, you get a lot of that coastal fog. So
yeah, so any of our non-California residents that are on the Zoom meeting today, welcome. And take note that for Southern California vacations, September and October are normally the most pleasant, and actually sometimes the warmest months of the year to be in the Southern California coastal zones.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. Even in the Central Valley where we have really hot summers, the winters are pretty nice. I told my partners, I said, because I grew up in Montana, I said, our average winter day in Stockton is like a late spring day back home. If it's sunny and 58, that's a pretty nice day in Montana. Not to mention the fact that it's hard to dig property corner mines when the ground is frozen. That's another disadvantage.
So what did Mark Twain say? The coldest day I ever spent in my life was a summer day in San Francisco.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
You guys get the fog down there when the high pressure's inland over Nevada. It pulls that marine layer in, and you guys are socked in.
Yeah, it gets a little clammy. So
it depends on if the high goes too high over out in Nevada, then we get a reverse flow of the winds. And in Southern California, they call that the Santa Ana winds. And that's typically what we get Oh, in the winter time sometimes. And we'll get some really nice, warm, clear days out of that.
Yeah, and
Yep.
fire. And sometimes fire.
It sometimes fires, yeah.
Yep.
We have the Washoe Zephyrs here, but they're in the summer afternoons,
Hmm.
and they flow east off the Sierra.
Yeah. All right. How we doing, Heather? We still have people in the waiting room?
Letting the last one in now.
All right.
There's 23 of us tonight.
Great. Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is Rob McMillan coming to you from the alternate headquarters of Mentoring Mondays. At the controls of the command center is Heather Keenan. Trent's had a busy surveyor's day of golf today, so he's on his way back from that outing. So for you field people, there are times when the office people go to the field. It's just usually they're golfing when they do. And this evening we've got Landon Blake coming back to talk to you for the second time in a month. So if you didn't get your chance to throw Rotten Tomatoes at the screen earlier this month, give it another try now. All right. Landon's bio is in our Mentoring Mondays website, and he's already posted a link in the chat to a YouTube video. And with that, Landon, why don't you tell them what's on that video, and you can take it away.
All right, thanks, Rob. I promise we won't ever do this to you twice again in 1 month. Once a month is probably enough. So, anyways, Trent reached out for a couple business topics, and one of the things I had on my website was I think the original talk was 5 tips for writing better land surveying RFPs. It was an article I wrote several years ago when I was still mostly did public works stuff, and I tried to look for it, you guys, and I couldn't find it. I apologize. If I can find it, I'll make sure I get the link to Trent. But on a related note, I just posted a video Sunday, I think, called "What's the Differences Between Bids and a Fee Estimate for Professional Services." So that's the link. It's a short video, but I did a post on LinkedIn and told people, I will occasionally post on LinkedIn and tell people I don't submit bids ever. And so some people misunderstood that and thought that meant I only ever work T&M. And that's not true. About 90% of the work I do is lump sum, or 95%. So it's not that we're afraid to do lump sum pricing or fixed fee pricing, but I don't do bids. And so the video goes in and explains what's the difference between a bid and a cost estimate for professional services, and when is it appropriate to use one and not use another. So I thought I'd just share that because it will be a little bit related. So I think I've got 8 tips that I'll give you guys tonight, just kind of rules of thumb for surveying RFPs. And so if you're not in public practice, this is, I thought, man, if I get a bunch of private surveyors on Mentoring Mondays, this isn't going to be applicable. But I thought, there's a couple reasons why it might still be good to go over this. One is when you're having conversations with your local agencies, it's good to know this, right? We want to help agencies write better RFPs for surveying. And the other thing I thought is, one of the smartest things you can do if you own your own surveying business is know what proposals to pursue, what opportunities to pursue, and what opportunities to not pursue. And so you can look at this. We're going to go over the 8 things, and you could use this in one of 2 ways. If you're in public practice, these are ways to write a better RFP. And if you're in private practice, these are red flags you can look for in an RFP or an RFQ that might indicate that the client isn't a great, might not be a great client or a great opportunity. So just so you guys know, I gotta give you the full disclaimer here. So about the first 15 years I was surveying, I did almost 95% public works. And then that about 5 years ago, that kind of flopped. So I do almost no public works surveying now. So I'm a little out of the game. It's been a few years since I've been in that particular game. So I just want to let you guys know. I don't know that a whole lot has changed about the way local agencies acquire surveying services in the last 5 years, but it's not something that I do anymore on a regular basis. But I have some horror stories that I'll tell you, and I think they'll help you guys understand why, one of the reasons I chose not to do a lot of public sector work is there's some challenges when you run a small firm just because of the way the government operates. And then it's been a real struggle here in California to get agencies to follow what we call QBS. I don't know how many of you guys have heard that term, but QBS is what they call qualifications-based selection. Okay, and what it means is if you're a public agency in California, you can't hire surveying services or engineering services or architectural services based on low bid. And so that's part of what we call the Mini Brooks Act, and it's a state law. And that law has been on the book for I don't know how many long. It's been a long time, decades and decades. And you would be amazed at how many cities and counties and small special districts still go out and try and get their surveying services on low bid. And for I don't know, a couple of years, I was on the qualifications-based selection committee of ACEC, which is the American Council of Engineering Companies. It's a professional association. And we would write letters to these public agencies and ask them to revise their RFPs. And they, I don't know, I'd say 50% of the time, they would flip us the middle finger. Like, it's pretty crazy. And so that's disheartening and a little bit disillusioning. But here's part of what I think has happened. Back in 2009, you were running a surveying company. You'd basically take whatever kind of work you could get. But I think part of what we're seeing now is we've got some public agencies. I've even been contacted by some public agencies that have told me, hey, nobody submitted for our last RFP. How come you didn't submit, or how come we're not getting anybody to submit? These are agencies that I know somebody that works in the agency. And a lot of times what I tell the agencies, yeah, your RFP sucks, or your contract is got some poison pills in it. And if you want to attract qualified consultants, you got to be reasonable, right? And how you do that. So let me I'll tell you some stories as we get into it. So okay, so let me get to the 8 tips, and I'd love to hear from you guys too. I don't have all the answers. If we got a public surveyor on tonight, I'd love to hear kind of from the other side, what are some challenges you guys have with consultants in private practice that are proposing on your work. But so one thing, here's the first tip. If you're writing an RFP, or again, this is a red flag, okay, don't ask for bids. If you're looking to hire a professional land surveyor, the very first thing I do when I see the word bid in an RFP is I round file it. I immediately round file it. So let me just ask you guys, as soon as I see somebody asking for a bid on a surveying proposal, what does that tell me about the client? It tells me 2 or 3 things, especially if it's a local agency client. By the way, I round file those RFPs, whether they're private or public, as soon as they ask for a bid. So what do you guys think? Yeah, Joey said shopping for cost. Yeah, so what that tells me is they're probably primarily interested in the cheapest price they can get, right? And that might be okay if people actually read scopes, but a lot of them don't. They just go straight to the total, right? So what I thought about doing? I haven't done this, but I'm ornery enough to try it. I'm just gonna, when I get RFQs or RFPs that want to bid, I'm just gonna start putting $1,000. You just put $1,000 in there, right? And see if I get the job. And then if I get the job, I'll tell them, well, now we can actually talk about getting your work done and what it's going to cost, right? It's you might as well just make a number up, right? Because I'll tell you what people do when they get work on low bid, right? They cut corners and they change order, right? And that's how you win work on low bid. Okay. And so that's the first thing I would say. As soon as I see submit your bid, yeah, I'm not even going to respond to that RFP. Now, here's part of the reason why. If you're doing a good job, and primarily this involves projects with a boundary surveying component, but it can apply to other types of surveying too, but especially with anything boundary related. If you're doing a good job, you're pulling a joiner deeds, you're doing a thorough search for monuments, you're filing the record of survey or the corner record like you're supposed to. Are you going to be the cheapest price? You going to be the lowest bid?
Mhm.
No freaking way. There's no way. There's always some guy out there willing to break the rules that is going to be cheaper than you. So like, look, if that's who the agency wants to work with, what am I going to do? I'm going to let them work with that guy, right? Like, I'm not, that's like, so that's the number one thing. Don't ask for bids. By the way, in California, if you're a public agency, it's illegal to ask for bids, right? And people still do it all the time. And like, I'm not talking about strangers. Like, these are cities. The city I live in will send me once a year RFP with a request for a bid, right? Like, I've been talking to these people for 20 years, right? And they just, and here's part of what I think part of the problem is, guys, is a lot of these local agencies now, they don't have a surveyor on staff, right? And so who's writing the RFP? The Public Works Department is writing the RFP, right? And so they've got some, engineering tech that doesn't know anything about qualifications-based selection writing the RFP. And that's why we see, and sometimes it's even worse. It's not the EIT, it's the purchasing department. Like, that's even worse. Like, if you got an RFP that's being written by the purchasing department, forget it, right? They're going to treat you like the guy that supplies toilet paper, right? Because that's their mindset. That's their mentality, right? Okay, so that's my first tip or red flag.
Landon, if
Yep.
your local agency that didn't get any response on their last one puts out another one,
Yeah.
I think you should put a bid in for like $5 million. You're the only one responding back. If they hire you, well, there you go.
Yeah, I've gotten, that's not a lot, but I've gotten maybe 2 of those calls in the last year from agencies that are like, hey, we can't get, nobody's submitting bids. Like, yeah, guys are busy, So I think sometimes public agencies forget, as a consultant, I want to be an attractive person to work with, right? I want an affordable rate schedule. I want to provide good client service. I want to have the right capabilities, but you also have to work at being a good client too, right? I mean, that's a two-way street, right? And I think sometimes, not all the time, there are great agencies to work with, but sometimes people can forget that that's a two-way street. All right, here's my second tip, and I'm going to give this has a caveat, so I'm going to give an exception to it. But so my second tip, the next worst thing to asking for a bid is asking for unit costs. Okay. And I kid you not, like, I have seen surveys that want a quote based on linear foot of boundary survey. Okay? Like, surveying doesn't work that way, right? So usually when I see somebody looking for unit costs, that's usually like they're smart enough to not ask for a bid, but not smart enough to understand qualifications based selection. And so, like, unit cost is the next best thing. So let me tell you a real story. Now, this was a long time ago, so I don't mind telling you who it was because they probably don't work there anymore. But I got a bid one time from the city of Yuba City, and they wanted somebody to come in and set a bunch of centerline monuments, and they wanted a unit cost per centerline monument, right? Which is great, if you're the contractor that's actually installing the wells. But, like, how do you determine the position of the centerline intersection? And can you give a unit cost for that? Right. So here's what I would, here's what I always tell agencies. If you put me in a situation where I have to give you a unit cost, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to pad my unit cost to cover the worst case scenario. In other words, you're going to pay for the worst case scenario on every unit because I am not going to lose money to take your work. Right. So here's another situation where I see people this is a little more typical than linear foot per price per linear foot of boundary, but I will also, all the time, I get real estate agents that will call me and say, I need a survey. The parcel's 3 acres. Right? No address, no APN, no deed, no title report. Well, it's 3 acres. Okay, great. So it's going to be triple what you paid for the last 1 acre survey you got, right? Right? So that's another kind of unit cost, right? Surveying doesn't work that way, right? A 1 acre survey in a tricky spot could be 5 times the cost of a 40 acre survey in a good spot, right? So unit costs don't work well. I'll tell you another example. I had they're building all kinds of logistical, warehouses and trucking facilities out here in my part of the California. I mean, just a ton. We're a major logistical center. And so I got a call one time from a company, and they said, hey, we're looking for we're looking for a unit cost on a couple parcels where we want to put warehouses up in the Central Valley for Boundary and Topo. And I said, I can't give you a unit cost. I said, I need to know the locations. They said, well, we can't give you the locations because we haven't bought the parcels yet. And the buyer doesn't want people in the neighborhood finding out that they're shopping because prices are going to go way up. So this is Amazon or somebody like that trying to buy space. And I said, I'll sign an NDA, but you got to give me the parcel locations. They said, well, we don't understand why you need this. It's the same. We build the same warehouse everywhere around the country. I'm like, that's cute. That works great for your structural engineer or for your, for your mechanical engineer. Maybe it isn't going to work for the civil and the surveyor, right? Every site is unique, right? These people thought that since they had a standard building design that they could just get a standard survey cost, right? But surveying doesn't work that way. So that's the next thing I look for is unit costs. Okay, now that's the next potential red flag. Now, let me give you a couple exceptions to that rule. I think it's okay to ask for hourly rates. You got to be careful if you're a public agency, though, in California, asking for hourly rates, because that could violate QBS depending on how you do it. But as a general rule, I'm more comfortable giving hourly rates, and I'm also okay with daily rates, half-day rates or daily rates. I don't mind doing that. If you just want to get a rough idea what a daily rate might be. Having said that, one of the problems I have giving people daily rates is they forget that there's a mobilization cost. Right. So you just have to be careful about that. If you don't want to call me to your job site to set 3 points. Right. Because I'm not going to charge you my hourly rate for that. Right. We have half-day minimums, and depending on where you're at, we charge you a full day minimum. Right. So you got to be careful about giving people hourly rates, because here's what happens. You give somebody hourly rates and then they call me and they say, hey, we only saw your guy for 20 minutes. So we only want to pay 0.2, whatever that is, 0.33 of an hour. Yeah, but it took an hour and a half to get there. Plus there was the prep. Plus there was the work he did when he got back. So you got to be careful with hourly rates. But okay, so somebody just
Jen mentioned by the mile is how boundary marking contracts are done in her location, which is I believe Massachusetts.
Really, by the mile? That's crazy. Yeah, you know what? I suppose you can do that, but here's what I always tell the client. It's always better to give me specifics, because that allows me to hone my number, right? If I'm just shooting at the dark and you want a by mile cost, I'm going to figure worst case, because that's how I'm going to make sure I don't lose my rear end, right? So the client's going to pay more ultimately for that, right? Because I'm taking the unknown, I'm taking the risk. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that was interesting. Somebody said it's QBS quality BS. Yeah, it can be, depending on, there's some, that might be some fluff. Well, maybe we'll do another talk in a month or two about QBS, but all right, here's my third thing. My third tip, my third tip is be clear about wage requirements, safety regulations, and training requirements. So if you're writing an RFP, and that's something I always look at. A lot of time agencies aren't clear. I'll tell you one of my number one pet peeves with public agency RFPs in California is they don't tell you whether prevailing wage applies. And that makes a huge difference in the cost of a survey, like a huge difference. Like as soon as we start paying prevailing wage, I double or triple the rate I'm paying my field guys, right? It's a huge difference. Okay. And so here's what, it's going to be hard to believe, but every prevailing wage job we've done in the last 2 years, and we haven't done very many, it's only been 2 or 3, but every prevailing wage job we've done, I've had the client tell me it's not prevailing wage. I'm like, hey, I think this is prevailing wage probably apply. Oh, no, it's not prevailing wage. Right. And then, what I tell the client? That's cute. Get me a letter that says it's not prevailing wage. And every single time I've asked for that in writing, they come back to me and say, you got to pay prevailing wage. Okay. Now, here's the problem with that. What about the RFP that they're getting from my competitor? What's he doing? And is he asking that question like me? Right? Or am I the only guy being punished because I'm trying to follow the law? By the way, you do not want to get busted not paying prevailing wages on a prevailing wage job, right? And they don't go after the agency for that. You know who they go after? They go after the business owner, right? So if you got a job where you think it might be prevailing wage, you better double, triple check, right? And if somebody's telling me that I'm doing surveying for a public agency and it's not prevailing wage, I want a letter in writing signed. And even then, I don't know if I would do it, right? So that's the other thing. That's another potential flag. And that should just be right in the RFP. I don't know why I have to ask the question. They should just put in there, prevailing wage requirements apply, right? Cut and dry. The other thing I've had happen is I've taken jobs, and then you show up to the job site, your crew shows up to the job site, and they're like, oh, hey, we have 4 hours mandatory safety training before we can let you on site, right? That's great. When were you going to tell me that? And where is that in my budget? Right. So if you have requirements like that, it's okay. I mean, I understand. Sometimes people have requirements like that. Before we let you on to our nuclear reactor site, you have to go through our safety training. That's great. I just need to know that ahead of time so I can budget for it. Right. Let's see. So training, safety, and wage requirements. Those are a big deal. And the big one is prevailing wage. But okay, so the other thing that comes up a lot, let me cruise through my list here. So some other things kind of related to that come up are site access and working hours. Okay, so one of the big problems I have with public agencies is site access. So most agencies don't want to deal with getting the surveyor access to neighbors' property. That's fantastic, but it's a nightmare. And if you want me to do it, I'm going to charge you a lot of money to do it. Okay, and so I'll tell you where I see this come up a lot is where we're trying to do aerial work, right? And especially on corridor projects. So if you're trying to map a corridor, a road, or a highway or canal, right? Where does your photogrammetrist want all the targets?
Private property outside the
Private property right outside the right of way, right? That's just good layout. Okay, that's great. I don't mind doing that, but imagine now that you've got a public agency. In their RFP, they want you to do that. They want you to map that corridor, and they don't say anything about access for targets. Who's doing that? That's a huge cost potentially, right? Now I can tell you what we did at one of the firms I work for that did a bunch of public works surveying. We just trespassed to set targets. Now that I'm a business owner, there's no way I would freaking run that risk. Somebody gets shot or hurt on private property, one of my guys or a landowner, like that, I could lose my whole business. Why am I going to take that risk on for the agency? Right. So like, look, now there's things you can do there, right? You can work with your photogrammetrist on your target layout. You can set more targets inside the right of way. You can try and position your targets, on cross streets, whatever. There's some different things you can do there, but guess what? The guy that's given the low bid, he's just given a price and he's not counting anything for site access, right? So that's another, site access can be a huge deal, especially on long linear corridor projects, and especially for aerial mapping. So that's another thing. So, ideally in the RFP, you're addressing all that stuff: site access, prevailing wage requirements, safety and training requirements, right? That's all being addressed in the RFP. All right, the other thing, so I'm down to number 4. This is a little more broad, so we're getting a little more broad now, less specific. But when you're writing an RFP, you have to understand that there's a risk versus cost trade-off. Okay, so the more risk that you ask the consultant to take, the more expensive my price is going to be. I have to be compensated for that risk. I'm not saying that I won't take on the risk. I will take on the risk, but I'm going to charge you for it, right? And here's what a lot of agencies do in their contracts. You see this on the engineering side and the survey side. They want to push all the risk to the consultant. Like, that's great, but I'm going to charge you for it. I'm going to charge you for that risk, right? And so let me give you an example. This actually happened. We had a public agency a few years ago reach out to us, and they needed a survey of a park. It was a ATV park, an ATV park, and it was big. It was, I don't know, 100 acres or more, a couple hundred acres, up in the rugged terrain. And they said, we got a grant to fence this park. And it wasn't a small grant. It was like, I don't know, $2 million grant. And they said, before we put the fencing in, we want to go ahead and get a boundary survey. We're like, that's a fantastic idea. They said, okay, great. They said, here's the bad news. We got to have the survey done in 30 days from today, or we lose the grant money. Okay. And like, we hadn't even been awarded the contract yet. So this is grant money that had sat on somebody's desk for 18 months, somebody at the Parks Department, and they waited till the last minute. Okay. Now it gets worse. So this is rugged terrain in the coastal range of California. And you know when they called us? November 15th. Like literally at any point in time, it was going to be too wet to get to that site anywhere on that site, right? It just turns into a muck hole. So we prepared an RFP for the, because we knew we could get the work done. So we prepared the RFP. You're probably thinking, what does this have to do with risk? I'm going to get to it in a minute. So we prepared the RFP and we submitted to the agency and we got selected for an interview. Because of course, we're the only RFP they got, right? And they might have got one more, I think. They might have had two. So we go into interview for the RFP and they're like, hey, we like your RFP. Think you guys can do a good job on this. And then they said, they said, do you think you guys can get this done in the next 3 weeks? So we asked them two questions. So we said, when can you get us a contract? And what happens if we don't get it done in 3 weeks? You know, so here's what they told us. They said, well, look, the gal that does our contracts, she's on vacation. She doesn't get back for another week. All right, so now they're giving me 2 weeks to get this giant survey done before the deadline, right? I'm like, find somebody else in the building that can sign a contract, right? Now, here's the kicker. They said, if you don't get the job done by the deadline, we're not paying you, and you're going to be liable to the county for a portion of the grant. Okay, at that point, what do you think we did?
Left?
Yeah, we stood up, we said thank you, and we left. Okay, so there was a client that didn't understand risk versus cost, right? Like, and that is a true story. I'm not making that up. That is somebody in the parks department at my local county that just had no clue, right? And like, there's a chance they lost that grant money anyways because they waited too long, right? But I don't know. Maybe there's survey companies that would have took that deal, but it wasn't my team. We said there's too much risk, uncompensated risk there. We're not going to do it, right? We aren't going to do it. So I think it's important to understand. So for the surveyors in private practice, here's what you got to do. You got to read through the RFP and the contract language and ask yourself, is there a reasonable trade-off here between cost and risk? If the agency's pushing all the risk on you, right? That's a bad sign. Here's another example, right? Like, how many times do you know what you're going to find in the field before you do the boundary survey? You don't know. You don't know what you're going to find. You can have an idea what you're going to find, right? But a lot of times you don't know. So here's what I always tell clients. If the clients are concerned about price on a boundary survey, especially a big boundary survey, tell them, hey, let's phase it. Pay me to go out for a couple of days, see what I can find. I'll give you a hard price for that. Then based on what I find, I can give you a follow-up price, right? But if you want me to price it all up front, it's going to be a big number because I'm going to cover the risk that I may not find any monuments, right? So, you know, it's hard when you're dealing with somebody at the Parks Department or the Public Works Department that just doesn't understand that part of surveying, right? But you have to try, you know, you got to understand what that risk is, risk versus reward. So here's what I tell public agencies when I give this talk to public agencies is, if you write a better RFP, you're going to get better pricing for your work, right? Manage the risk intelligently, figure out how you can phase things, and you're going to save money. Like, don't go try and save money by low bid. Save money by writing a more intelligent RFP, right? There are, surveyors are going to price risk. We're going to price risk, right? And so you have to be careful about you have to be reasonable about how you manage the risk. Okay. All right. So here's my other thing. And I got a story. I'll tell you a short story. So this is number 5. Think about the cost to your consultant of the selection process. Man, the typical public RFP just generates so much paperwork compared to what I do in the private sector. I'll tell you what, I win my average job in the private sector with 3 pieces of paper, maybe 4. Right? So I want to tell you a story because I don't think a lot of surveyors think this through all the time, but I'm going to tell you a story that happened. This is just a couple of years ago. So I worked for a big engineering company who will remain anonymous. And one of our local counties put out an RFQ for their road department. Okay. And it was surveying and engineering for road design. Okay. It was a 2-year RFQ. The maximum contract value was $100,000. Okay. Now, let's just do some napkin math here, right? We don't even need a calculator. let's just say you've got your crap really together and you can make a 25% profit on everything you do. Okay. How much profit do you have? And let's say the county selects you and you max out the contract value. Okay. Those are all ifs, by the way. If they select you and if you max out the contract value, right? Your max profit is going to be 25K, right? And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't mind admitting this because I try and practice humility. I've had my business for 2 years. We are not anywhere near a 25% profit margin, right? Like, if we get half that, I'm super tickled pink happy, right? Because we're training people and it's hard. It's hard to start a new business. So like, look, best case scenario, you got a 25% profit margin. They select you, you max out the contract value. Your total profit on that work is 25 grand. Now I'm going to tell you what this giant engineering company did. They put 3 marketing people on this SOQ. They had 10 of us meet together in the Bay Area for interview prep. Then they sent 3 of us to do interview prep. So you know what we spent on that SOQ? We spent $25,000 in staff time on the SOQ. Okay. Now, here's the good news. We got selected. All right. So we might be break even at this point. But the county went and selected every single firm that submitted an SOQ. So they shortlisted 6 firms. Now, here's the other sad part. Do you know how much value my company got out of that 2-year SOQ? How much work we got? We got nothing. Right? We got no now. So here's what that taught me as a younger surveyor, right? Like, man, before I submit on an RFP or an RFQ, I got to do some math. What's the total possible payout of the contract value? If I'm profitable, what's my total profitable? What does it cost to get qualified and selected? And what's my odds? And here's what I've learned, right? And I'm not picking on public agencies. What I'm trying to do is teach surveyors in private practice. You got to be careful with your time, because here's what I've learned. A lot of those contracts it doesn't pencil. You're spending more than your potential profit to win the work, right? So you got to look at that, right? And if you're a public agency, you got to think about that, man. If you want 10 resumes, you know how many RFPs I look at? They want 10 resumes in 5 years. For 5 years, they want to know every single person I've worked for, what the contract value was, what the construction value was, when the work was completed. You know, that costs money. Putting all that together, I got to look at that. Look, if that's a $12,000 survey of your pump station, forget it. It ain't worth it, right? So that's something you got to think about. So on the public side, be aware of what is it going to cost your typical consultant to get you the paperwork you're asking for. Now, look, I know there's lawyers and legal departments and there's rules that have to be followed. I understand that, but it's in your interest as an agency to keep that process as streamlined as you possibly can, given the rules that are in place, right? Because a good consultant is going to weigh that cost. They're going to weigh that cost to propose, right? Okay, so you got to think about what it's going to cost to get through the selection process. Okay, here's another kind of broad tip.
Hey, Brandon.
Yep.
Something that maybe everybody isn't aware of is there are different ways of doing these kinds of things, and you may be bidding on a particular or trying to submit your SOQs for a particular contract,
yep,
for a particular construction event,
right,
or design construction project, or you may be submitting for what we call an on-call services contract.
Yeah.
And that was something I was involved with numerous times, working for a very large organization that shall remain nameless.
Yeah.
But actually, I see Robert Perez on the call, and at one of the interviews, he was part of the team being interviewed, and I think that's a great perspective that hopefully, I don't think we have too many public sector folks on here, but something that you got to recognize as the public sector side, is just what you were saying. How much does this firm have wrapped up in this? And typically the on-call contracts were for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. So there was room to make this profit in there.
Yeah, that's a little better. Yeah, you can do a little more with a $1 million contract, right? Yeah, there's some room in there.
Yeah, but I think the one that Robert was in on, I think their team that came to the interview panel was, I want to say 8 people. Most of them were like principal level.
Yeah, you're spending some money on that interview. Yeah,
right. They're dropping probably, without even considering transportation costs, they were probably dropping close to $10,000 for that day.
Yeah,
in staff time, and like you said, that's a huge chunk. But that's also something that we private sector surveyors have to look at just in evaluating putting in a actual bid or a offer for professional services to Joe Contractor to build this single family custom home on this lot.
Yeah.
How much time is it going to take us to do proper research? How much time is it going to take us to do all the things that go into that? And can we put enough in this proposal to cover our costs?
Yeah.
Otherwise we end up with the surveyor that wins as the surveyor that wins the Powerball, and he said, "What are you going to do?" You go, "Man, I'm just going to keep surveying until I go broke."
Yeah. So a couple things Rob brought out that I think were great. One is this absolutely applies to the private sector just like it does the public. So I think that's true. I will tell you, as I get older, I do less proposals. I do fewer proposals, right? I've just learned to be more selective about who I work for. And, I get tired of, my buddy went and he got a washing machine. He just bought a washing machine from somebody. He's picking up a washing machine from somebody on OfferUp or whatever. And she says, well, I got this dryer over here that matches the washing machine, but it's not working. I called the repairman, but he wanted $200 to just come look at it. I'm like, yeah, absolutely he did. Because diesel's $5 a gallon. And he got tired of looking at freaking dryers for old ladies that would never hire him to do the actual repair. Right. But like surveyors are like the dryer repairman that drives to everybody's house and never gets paid for any of that time. Right now, I don't charge people a fee to provide a proposal, but I tell you, we've gotten way more choosy about who we provide proposals for because you can spend a lot of time on it, and it applies to the public sector too. One of the things, I don't know what other surveyors' experiences are. We've got an on-call contract right now, and we've got some work from it. But a lot of the on-call contracts I've seen my companies win over the years have always provided a fraction of the work that we anticipated. And I don't know why that is, but that's been pretty typical. So I'm way more skeptical now. I want to have a real honest conversation with the public agency about what they think the actual expected dollar value of work is coming out of that on-call. Because it's usually, I don't know how often those contract values get maxed out, but it's not something I see frequently.
Landon, you can ask the agency how much the previous on-call was
that's
used.
A great suggestion. Yeah,
and we have done that in the past to say how much was it used before. And sometimes they have a projection of how much they'll use, but a lot of times they don't know how much they'll use, but you can gauge it on what they did in the past.
No, that's good. Yeah, that's excellent, Ben. Yeah.
And Robert Seidel mentioned that most of the on-call contracts for his past agency that he worked for were multi-year and $1 million. And I don't recall, this might have been a California state rule that if you have one of these A&E contracts, you can either, if you want to, at the end of the contract, you can extend the time of the contract, or you can extend the dollar value of the contract.
Yeah, so you got to look at that too. Yeah.
And like you say, how much is the A&E consultant going to get out of this? A lot of times those those contracts are set up like a safety net. And at least that was the way it was for Big Orange. And when we got to a point where you say, oh man, we need to do this on this contract. One of the things that would hamper us is if we didn't have what we call $242, the appropriate color of money, the funding type allocated to that particular project, then we could not use consultants on the project.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I would see happening was, I'd say, I'll put Perez back on the hot seat here. Hey, Robert, we need you to do this topo of this many miles of state highway, and put together a proposal on that, because every we call them task orders. Every task order we had to have a dollar value assigned to it. And it's like, hey, here's the task order we want, and get us back up, numbers on this in like 2 days, and we want to move forward on this in a week. And and just like you said about that parks issue is, and by the way, we want deliverables in our hands in 3 weeks. So you got to hit the ground running on this, because somebody said, yeah, we can get a hold of that. We can do that. And then, we can work that in with our other stuff to do. And then all of a sudden, one of your people inside decides, hey, that stuff that I've been telling you for 2 months that, we can get to that. We got plenty of
we can't do it.
Well, now, we can't do it. I got 2 people out on vacation, and I got 3 people with COVID, and now I'm behind the 8 ball, and I'm going to need more consulting besides this stuff that I told you already that we weren't going to have to do.
Yeah, no, that's good. So I've only got 2 or 3 more. I don't want to take too long, so I'll get to them. But I just want to mention, typically when I'm seeing a $1 or $2 million contract, on-call contract, that's at a larger agency. I don't see very many $1 million surveying on-calls at the local level. I'm not saying they don't exist. If you got a big city or big, public utility company, that might be true. But so all I'm saying is, do the math. You just got, it's okay to spend 10 grand on a $1 million contract if you're going to get $1 million worth of work. But it's probably not okay to spend 10 grand on a $100,000 on-call contract if you're only going to get half of the work, right? So you got to do the math. So another quick thing is, and this is really important when you have non-surveyors writing your RFP, is I always tell them, define your desired outcomes, not your process. Because here's what happens, especially when you get a non-surveyor that defines the process, is they eliminate my ability to innovate and save money, right? Be flexible. Maybe I want to scan it, or maybe I want to fly it with a UAV. And, so you tell me what you're trying to do, tell me what your goals are, and let me decide the approach. That's especially important if you don't have a surveyor writing the RFP. If you have a surveyor writing the RFP, you can specify a little more of the process, but I still think you want to be careful. I'll just give you an example. And these are private sector examples, but it'll illustrate the point. So the last 12 months, we've had 2 people come to us for parcel maps, minor subs. And we realized after we took a look at the deed and the title report that we could do lot line adjustments. That saves the client a huge amount of money. Now, let's just say that was a public agency RFP and they put out an RFP for a parcel map. I don't have the option to submit a lot line adjustment. Right? Like that's going to be hard to do. Like my proposal could get kicked out for not meeting the requirements of the RFP. Right. So I think you need to be careful as a public agency about being too process driven. Sometimes I'll get a proposal for a public agency and they think they're going to protect themselves because they've had their EIT write a 12-page survey RFP, scope of work. And like, I can always tell it's a non-surveyor because they say they want accuracy to 0.001 of a foot. Right? Now, I don't know if I can deliver that accuracy, but even if I could, it would be really, really expensive. And it might not be what you need for your road topo. Right? So So be driven on the outcome, not on the process. Ideally, let me tell you how this works in an ideal world. This doesn't happen very often, but in an ideal world, if you're a public agency, you say, hey, we're going to redevelop our marina. We're going to run a qualifications-based selection process to select a good survey team, right? And that's it. That's your whole RFQ. You give them a rough idea of what we're doing. Here's what we're doing. We're going to redevelop a marina. Okay. Then you go select the team, or maybe you select 3 from a short list, right? And then you go sit down with that survey company and you have a conversation with them. Hey, here's the project we have in mind. How would you approach it? What would you do to reduce risk during construction and to save money, right? And then you allow your consultant to innovate. That's how qualifications-based selection is really supposed to work. And we don't do it that way most of the time, right? And I find myself frustrated a lot because we've got, I've got 20 years of experience and we've got all these tools at our disposal now that we didn't have 10 years ago. And I want to apply those to the project and show the client how they can save money. And then they come to me and they tell me this is they give me a recipe. Look, if you got a recipe, you probably don't need to hire me, right? You just go hire another survey crew and have them follow your recipe, right? And that's okay. You know what you call that? That's a staff augmentation contract. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but if you already have the recipe, get a staff augmentation contract. Don't hire a guy like me and then take away my ability to innovate or be flexible or adaptable, right? That's a bunch of the value that I bring. A lot of the value a good surveyor brings to a project is, you got a client that thinks they want to do X and they think they should get there through Y, and you look at it and you go, oh no, Y is not the right way to do it. You want to do it over here. You want to do it this way. Here's why. It'll save you, here's how it's going to save you money or reduce risk. So define your outcomes, not your process. The last thing, or second to last thing I have, is respect qualifications-based selection. Don't practice qualifications-based bidding. Okay, so let me just tell you guys, if you don't know what qualifications-based bidding is. Qualifications-based bidding is where you go and you use a kind of QBS process to get a pre-qualified list. Okay, so everybody submits their company qualifications and you pick 8 surveyors. Okay, and then when you have an actual project, you send it to the 8 surveyors and look for the lowest bid. Just pick the qualification part, people, and just go get your lowest bid. Right? Because we get back to the problem we had before with lowest bid. Right? The problem with lowest bid is there's always ways to cut corners. There's always ways, right? I'm an old guy now. I know how to cut corners if I want to, right? There's always ways to cut corners, right? That's what you're going to get with low bid. So don't do that, right? Talk to the surveyor about what you can afford. What's realistic. I'll tell you one other quick story. I got a call from a city. It's a city that I worked in, and I got a call from the public works gal in public works. I'd known for a long, long time. She says, Landon, she says, we hired one of your competitors to do a bunch of leveling work because we wanted to update our benchmark book. And I said, okay, that's great. She said, here's the problem. She says, I got their deliverable and I don't know what to do with it. I don't even know how to read it. Right? She's a civil engineer. And I said, okay. She said, can we hire your company to review their deliverable and tell us what we got? Because we think we got a pile of crap, but we're not sure. And so I said, yeah, we'll take a look at it. And the surveyor I'm still friends with the surveyor at my competitor, right? Because we swim in a small pool. So she sends me the deliverable, and it was like a data dump out of Leica G-Matic's office, right? And I could barely read it, and I was a surveyor, right? There was all kinds of error flags on it and everything. So I called my buddy up, and I said, hey, I'm reviewing this deliverable you gave the city. Man, I can understand why they're having a hard time with this. Can you talk to me, Goose? What's going on here, right? I know you're a decent surveyor. He's like, yeah, he told me the budget they had, right? And I was like, oh, all right. Now I understand why they got what they got, right? Okay, so we ended up having a meeting. So we had a meeting. So I sent over my initial review. I said, yeah, this is not, in my opinion, probably what you guys needed, but it may be what you paid for. Right. So we had a meeting. The other survey company came, I came, the public works department from the city came, and we sat down and we got into a conversation. And I told her, I told the gal, I said, look, for your budget, I understand this is what you paid for. Right. Then I looked at my buddy, and this is in front of the public works director. I looked at my buddy and I said, here's where I hold you responsible. You should have told the city that you couldn't get them a usable product for that budget. Like, you had an obligation to do that. Like, if the client has a budget that you can't deliver a good product for, don't take the job, right? So here's the compromise they ended up working out. My competitor agreed to do some additional work at no charge. The city didn't get everything they wanted, but the consultant spent a little more money to get them something. I said, look, you at least got to get this gal a spreadsheet with some point descriptions and elevations. Like a geomatics office adjustment report that's just not acceptable, right? But they didn't get what they wanted. Okay, so there's a lesson on both sides there, right? Like, you got to have a reasonable budget to get a usable product. And as a consultant, if I look at a potential budget in a RFP, and I see that it's not reasonable, I'm not going to pursue that work opportunity, because I'm not going to cut corners to make the budget work, right? Okay, so the last thing I had was have reasonable contract requirements. So the very first thing I do, the second thing I do after I look for if they're asking for a bid, the second thing I do is I go look at the indemnification language in the contract, right? Because that's usually the poison pill. Okay, so the indemnification language is duty to defend. If somebody sues them, do they get to sue you? Do you have to defend them if they get sued, right? And that's the number one thing in your contract that is not insurable. Okay, and let me tell you how many, I've been surveying 20 years. Do you know how many times I've successfully negotiated a contract language change with a public agency? 0 times. They will not do it. And it's not the people in public works, it's the attorneys.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but here's the deal. Now, not everybody's like this, but you got a poison pill in your contract, I won't work for you. Period. There's cities and counties we don't work for because they won't change your contract language. And like, here's the bottom line. I got a small firm, guys. I'm not going to risk my firm to sign your crappy contract. I won't do it. Right. And I don't think other surveyors should do it either. Right. And if you don't believe me, if you don't think that stuff is important, I can't remember the exact case citation, but you can look it up. It was CH2M Hill. They got sued for something that wasn't their fault. But in their contract language, they agreed to defend the client from any kind of lawsuit. That case went all the way to the California Supreme Court, and the California Supreme Court told CH2M Hill, pay up. That's the real deal, boys, ladies and gentlemen. Like, it's no joke, at least not in California, right? So I always check that contract. Now, there could be other things in the contract that are a problem. I always look at the indemnification language first, right? The other thing I'm usually careful about is, how can my product be reused? What's my liability to third parties? I don't provide warranties. I'm not selling you a refrigerator, right? So you got to go in and look at that language. And so what I would tell you, if you're a public agency, is, if you're not getting good responses to your RFPs, you got to go look at your contract language, right? If you have poisonous contract language, here's the thing. If you got poisonous contract language, there's only one kind of surveyor giving you RFPs. What kind of surveyor is it? Right? Or maybe 2 kinds of surveyors. It's either a surveyor that's too dumb to read contract language, right? Or it's a surveyor that read the language and decided he or she was going to roll the dice. You don't want either one of those kinds of surveyors working for your agency, right? So that's the problem. Now, here, I understand that as a challenge, and here's why. Because the lawyers don't care. All right. But like, if you let your lawyers run your public works department, that's not good. There's a reason we put engineers in charge of the public works department and not lawyers. Right. Like, look, if I let our HR consultant have their way, I would have a 400-page team manual at my company that no one would ever read. But man, it would sure save me in a lawsuit. Okay. But I'm not going to do that. I told my HR consultant, like, look, I want a 10-page team manual. Something that somebody will actually read and understand. I'm going to run the risk that I might settle a lawsuit with a future employee one day, right? But it probably won't bankrupt me. And like, I am not going to ask people to sign something that isn't palatable, that they can't read and understand, right? So it's the same thing if you're a public agency and you hand me a 300-page contract, I'm probably not working for you, right? Because a good surveyor wants to read and understand the contract language. Right. So that's the other thing. All right, so that's my list. I don't know, there was eight things, right? Don't ask for bids. Don't ask for unit costs. Be clear about wage requirements, safety requirements. Understand there's a trade-off between risks and costs. Think about the cost to your consultant of the selection process. Define your desired outcomes, not the process. Don't give me a recipe. Respect qualifications-based selection. Don't do qualifications-based bidding, and have reasonable contract language. Those are my things. So,
Hey, Landon. Hey,
Go ahead,
Landon,
George.
I got a quick one for you. Is there a place where we can learn more about qualified base selection?
yeah,
Those of us-
absolutely. You know
Is
what?
there
If
a
you guys,
book?
yeah, I don't know of a book, but if you guys just Google ACEC QBS, let me put it in the chat. You'll probably hit the site. They've actually got some videos online that are really good. And here's the thing: if you guys reach out to me and let me know, ACEC has a full-time person. All they do is QBS, and they will travel to any agency in California and give a webinar, like not a webinar, like a workshop. It might be a webinar right now, but they'll give a workshop on QBS at no charge. They're really good folks over there, and they really understand that law. So, yeah. So I encourage you to take advantage of it. So good question, Joey. Thank you.
And Landon, one of the comments in the chat, Robert Seidel again, always have clearly defined deliverables. And from the surveyor's perspective, find out what those are, understand what those are, and be sure that you can provide those.
Yeah, that's excellent. Awesome. You know what sometimes snags us up if we're not careful, if I don't remember to ask, is, we're typically on the latest version of CAD, but sometimes we got clients, like I just had a client, they're working in version 2010 still. And like, we had to convert all our drawings back because I didn't ask. And that's a pain in the butt. I mean, that takes time, especially if you're doing, like, if you're in Civil 3D or something and all your intelligent objects stop working, like, yeah. So that's a great comment. Yeah. Understand the deliverables. Now, I do a good job when we're writing a scope. I think we do a good job of deliverables, but I don't always do a good job of looking at that when I'm getting an RFP. So that was a good comment. Excellent. Yeah.
And George chimed in with, there are probably 1,000 lawyers or more for every surveyor. If we quit taking on these contracts, pretty soon there would be no one to do their work. Things might change.
Yeah. I don't know. I always feel like surveyors are racing to the bottom. Like we had a client, I posted a YouTube video about this, but we had a client that reached out to us. They hired a big national engineering firm. I won't mention it. So we did an Alta survey. The property got sold. The new buyer bought the property. They hired a big national engineering company in to take over the project, which was fine. We gave them our files and everything. So they called me about a year later and they said, hey, this national engineering company won't answer our phone or our phone calls. We need a land title survey update. Could you do it? And we said, sure, we could do it. And we gave them a scope and a fee, and they were happy with the price. And they sent me over their contract. And it was a construction contract, and it had a bunch of language in there about how we're going to warranty the work product. So I emailed the client and I said, hey, you guys obviously haven't hired a surveyor before. I was like, here's the CLSA standard agreement. We'll sign this. And they're like, no, you got to sign our agreement. I'm like, all right, well, will you take suggested revisions? And they said, yeah, sure. So I bled all over the contract and sent it back. Well, we found out later that this company was actually run by a hedge fund, and like the 6 people on the board of the hedge fund were all attorneys. And guess what? They never called me back because I wouldn't sign their construction contract. Now, here's what I suspect. They got a surveyor to sign it, or they'd have called me back. Somebody in Central California signed that construction contract to do that Alta update. Like, man, and just so you guys know, by the way, you don't want to sign a contract that isn't covered by your E&O insurance, guys. Like, that contract's not covered. It's not covered by, and here's what I tell clients. My clients don't want me to sign a contract that's not covered by my E&O insurance either, because I'm going to let you in on a little secret about most guys like Landon Blake that own a surveying business. They don't have any money. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, all I'm worth is my insurance. You know what I tell people? They're like, we're going to sue you. I'm like, that's great. I've got a dog with a bad leg that don't listen, and a crazy Latina wife, right? And a house that I owe more money on than it's worth. Like, come and get me. You come and get me. Like, I will pack up that wife and that dog and send them to you FedEx priority mail. Right?
Well, And that works even for your contracts with your regular general public too, because your E&O insurance is more than happy to settle and raise your rates if they'll even insure you anymore. So to me, E&O insurance is almost a waste of time. You have to have it, but it's pretty crazy expensive, and God bless, God willing, you never have to use it. But
no, you're right. You're absolutely right, George, which is why I tell my clients, hire a good surveyor. That's the real protection, right? Okay, first of all, I don't have any money. You're only getting money out of my insurance company. And George is right. My insurance company has really good lawyers, right? So just prevent that whole problem and hire a surveyor that's going to do good work.
We had a construction defects law here in Nevada that was just the shits. I mean, it was horrible. If you drove by the job and they saw your company name on the door of the truck, and there was something went wrong with that project, it had bad paint on the outside of the houses,
they could sue you.
Or 10 years later, the toilet broke on a wax ring or something and flooded part of the house. They would call you in and they would have a big hearing, and you'd go to deposition, and you'd spend weeks putting together all the information on the job, and all you did was stake the damn thing. And so at the end of the deal, you know, if it was $100,000 job, let's say, is typical for a large subdivision here.
Sure.
At the end of the day, the attorney that was running the depositions would say, well, gee, you guys didn't do anything to cause this problem. Tell you what, we'll let you out of this thing. Give us 20 grand.
Yeah. It's like blackmail.
Yeah.
No,
well, okay. So I did this job for nothing. Plus I lost 10 grand.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I'm picky about who I work for. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'll tell you guys another quick contract story. It's a big engineering company I work for. Somebody busted a benchmark and we built a skyscraper like 3 feet too tall. Okay. And so they lost the top floor of the building. I'm not making this up. This is a true story. So they couldn't exceed the height requirement. So they lost the top floor of the skyscraper. Now, what do you think the top floor, but what do you think the penthouse suite on a condo tower in the Bay Area is worth? Right. It's got a few zeros behind it. So we got sued. Now here's what happened. We get sued, and my CEO it was my boss's boss. My CEO goes to my boss's boss and was like, how on God's green earth did we sign a contract with this kind of language in it? Right? It was a construction contract. And my boss's boss tells the CEO, what are you talking about? We sign these kind of contracts all the time. And guess what? That company cut a check with 6 zeros behind it on that job. Right? Now we screwed up, but the point was, once they looked at the contract language, they're like, forget going to court. Just cut these people a check. Right? Because we signed really crappy contract language. Right? And the CEO didn't even know what was going on. So contract language is important, and it's important if you're a public agency and you have a contract that says whatever happens on the job for any reason, I get to sue Landon Blake and his children and his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren, and they will pay whatever money the judge decides. I'm not signing that contract, and it's not insurable. It's not insurable, right? And that's the key. So, to some extent, that contract language provides a false sense of security, because if it's not insurable, you'll never get the money from me, right? Like, I'll move to Kansas. You'll never see me again, right? Like, I don't have that money. And like, the nice thing about the United States is we don't run debtor prisons. Like, this isn't Venezuela. It's not like if I screw something up and I don't have the money, you can lock me away for 50 years. Like, RH goes bankrupt and you never see the money, right?
Landon,
yeah.
Don't move to Kansas. There's no trees to hide behind there.
There's no trees? Okay, yeah, Kansas, Idaho, maybe, Idaho. Anyways, I appreciate you guys listening to me tonight. Hopefully some of that was helpful. If you guys are writing RFPs or evaluating RFPs, those are some things to look at. And I appreciate you guys having me tonight very much. Rob, thanks for hosting.
All right, Landon. Adam Griven posted up a comment thanking you and saying he watched closure reports in AutoCAD Civil 3D that you posted up on YouTube. And so apparently he's been watching quite a few of your videos on
Oh, that's
YouTube.
cool. I'm glad. Adam and my wife, those are my 2 followers on YouTube.
All right.
Thanks, Adam. You're my hero.
Hey, you got more than I do, Landon. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing your insights on this, Landon. A fun conversation all the way through. I think we got a lot of people online that could chime in if anybody's interested. If you want to say something or ask a question, please do so now.
Hey, Rob, am I coming through?
You are, Robert.
Hey, I just wanted to say, I don't mind you putting me on the spot. I wanted to say a couple things. I as you know, I did work for, a few large scale engineering companies, both national and global. And there is a way to make money on the larger contracts, like you're talking about, the on-call staff augmentation, stuff like that. But man, it is super expensive up front. Landon, spot on. We spent thousands and thousands of dollars up front to land those contracts. But it's a crazy experience. But I was going to tell Landon, one of those companies I worked for, part of going after these larger contracts, you have to have a team, assemble a team of different companies, your DBE, all that stuff. And the contract language for this company was just brutal, man. It was horrible. And of course, I'm bringing team members in that, I consider friends and stuff. So I go to the attorney for the company I'm working for, and I'm like, man, is there anything we can do with this contract language? It's just tough, man. And he started laughing at me. He says, yeah, no, I know it's horrible. We wouldn't even sign our own contract.
Yeah.
He was super proud of that.
Yeah, that's attorneys for you. I'm going to tell you guys something. My partner came to me because he hears me preach all the time, right? And I got 2 great partners because they call me out on my bull crap all the time, right? So if you ever go into business, like, get a partner that'll call you out on your bull crap, right? So one of my partners came to me and he said, hey, I was looking at our contract and I noticed that our indemnification language wasn't reciprocal, right? Because that's something we always look for. We want language in a contract that's reciprocal. In other words, if I say I'm going to do something, then the client should return, they should do the same thing. And he said, hey, I don't think our indemnification language is reciprocal. And I said, what? And so I went and looked at it and I was like, you know what? You're right. It isn't reciprocal. So we were asking the client to do something that we weren't doing in return. And you know what? Just last week, I revised that contract language to make it reciprocal. Right. So I think you're absolutely, so don't be like the sleazy attorney. Right. Like, don't ask people to sign something that you wouldn't sign. That's a good rule of thumb. And here's what I think. This is my hope. And I get a little depressed sometimes. I get a little disillusioned. But my hope is if you do business that way, that in the long run, it pays off. Right. Like, if you're out there providing people with a fair agreement and you have a reputation for being reasonable, I think in the long run that pays off. Right. If you add an organization that's just trying to see if they can sneak by poison, contract language, like, that reputation catches up after a while, I think. And so you just got to remember that for sure. Anyways, great story. That's a typical attorney for sure. Hopefully we probably have a bunch of attorneys on here, but anyways, don't be that kind of attorney. So, all right, guys. Well, hey, I know it's Monday night. It's 5:15, so I'll let everybody get to dinner, but I appreciate you guys having me. And Rob, thanks for hosting.
All right. And so we got another one coming up. Mentoring Mondays coming up next Monday, the 7th. For some reason, Trent did not schedule one for the middle of the month. I don't know why he'd want us to take February 14th off, but his wife may have some input on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But then we'll be back. So back out at the 21st. So 7th, the 21st, the 28th for the rest of this month. And some people popping up on the chat, Landon. Be sure to look at those before you go. Just thanking you for the presentation. And thanks everyone for joining us. Great to see some faces and hear some voices and get some input from the from all of you attendees.
All right. Good night, guys.
Thank you.